Well, good morning. Happy 2021. It is good to see so many of you joining us this morning. This is officially our first coffee break update of the new year. The last time we were with you was, I think, in the middle of December. So it was before the New Year, before Christmas. So I hope that everyone is doing well, that you are finding good health, or you're getting back to it. And we wish you all, to start everything, we wish you all a happy new year. So thank you for joining us. My name is Marshall Haprov. I am the communication specialist for the Mojave Desert Air Quality Management District and the chair-elect for the Greater High Desert Chamber of Commerce. And like I said, it is great to see everyone and great to have you joining us. I have some introductions to make. We have a great morning for you. We have some phenomenal presentations. But before I do any of that, hey, Mark Creffield, our 00 CEO, of course, he's with us as always. Mark, do you remember about 2 years ago, almost right about this exact time, I sent you a text message? Do you remember that?
I do remember it well. Matter of fact, I just shared it as a memory on my Facebook page 2 years ago today. I will never forget that date, Marshall.
Yeah, I will never forget that date either, because today is my little boy Alex's 2nd birthday. So I wanted to, because I get to be the MC, I wanted to say happy birthday to my little boy. Of course, he's not watching right now because he doesn't have a Zoom account. At least I don't think he does. But he will watch this later on our TV. So I just wanted to make sure and throw that out there. Happy birthday to my little boy. He completed our family. So I'm thrilled to get to do that with you here this morning. And of course, as always, we have running our PowerPoint and taking your questions is my dear friend and everyone's friend, the executive pastor at Victor Valley Christian Church, Neil Harris. He is also a board member with the Greater High Desert Chamber of Commerce. Good morning, Neil.
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good. I don't have any ribs from Mark yet. I think the year is just way too early.
I'm sure we can rectify that before the day's over.
I just had a question. Am I still 00 CEO since I'm now the Greater High Desert?
Would that be quadruple? Oh, it doesn't roll off the tongue quite the same way. It doesn't. We'll stick with.
We'll stick with 00 CEO. It's nice. I mean, it's wrong, but it's nice.
Yeah. And you have a license to kill something.
We may not have any jokes from Mark yet, but Jan Gonzalez is on the call also. I'll formally introduce her later. Don't worry, Jan. But I just wanted to point that out, Mark, that we might not have any jokes, but I'm sure Jan has a dose of reality for you.
Fair enough.
All righty. Well, again, thank you for joining us. It's good to have everyone with us. We also have several sponsors. But before we introduce you to our sponsors and our main presentation, I want to once again introduce you to our 00 CEO, the president and CEO of the Greater High Desert Chamber of Commerce, Mark Creffield. He is going to update us on the goings on with the chamber. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. Well, thank you again, Marshall, for that wonderful introduction, and welcome everybody. Welcome Greater High Desert Chamber of Commerce. We're 2 weeks into it, and there's a lot of things going on, but I just wanted to update you all on some mainly on some updated events. Our next Valley Morning Insight will be on Wednesday, February 3rd, which will be the state of the city for the city of Victorville. Throughout this year, we will have state of events for the town of Apple Valley, the city of Hesperia, the city of Adelanto, state of the county, but we will be leading off the state of events with Victorville on Wednesday, February 3rd. The invite to register for this will go out starting next week. We also have some sponsorship opportunities that's going to go out in the e-blast today. So if you are interested, you can email me or send me a text, or put your name and company in the chat box, and then I'll review that after this meeting and reach out to you if you have any interest. Let's see, we've merged our databases into one, which has been a huge undertaking for myself and my staff. Some of you may have to be resent your login information. Those of you Apple Valley or Victor Valley databases, we've merged into the Hesperia database. So if you cannot use your login, just please email me and I will resend you credentials to take care of that. Again, please, some grace and mercy as we navigate through the merger. We're noticing a lot of little glitches that we are taking care of, but we appreciate your patience as we get through all this. Wanted to mention our next coffee break update will be 2 weeks from today on Friday, January 22nd. We will have our city and town updates on that Friday. So again, those email invites will be going out soon. As well, if you're interested in sponsoring, it's $75. So again, if you're interested in sponsoring an upcoming coffee, please put your company in the chat box and I will get back to you. And then lastly, I want to mention that we're going to have a Zoom meeting in mid-February that will be on new California labor laws. So more information on that. And when you get a chance to register, please do. It'll be a very informative Zoom meeting on 2021 labor laws. And that's all I have, Marshall. Again, thank you, everybody. Thanks so much for being on the call today. We have 96 on the call. I think this is one of our biggest coffee break updates, and we're so happy you're all here to be with us. So, Marshall, thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark, for that update. Yeah, we have I say it often, we have a packed room, but today is really, really packed. And I just wanted to point out, just a point of clarity, Mark, in 2 weeks, our next coffee break update is the 29th, not the 22nd. So if you have putting them on your calendar, make sure you mark it for the 29th.
Boy, the mistakes just keep rolling in, don't they, Marshall?
Yeah, why not? Why not? It's a new year. Plenty of time to make up for it. So, all right, so we have that out of the way. So next up, I want to introduce you to our sponsors for this week's coffee break update, and the first one of 2021. We're fortunate to have 3 of them. So we are going to start with Grand Canyon University, and I would like to introduce you to Rosita Smoleniski. Good morning, Rosita.
Good morning. I want to take the opportunity to say Happy New Year's to everyone. Wishing everyone health and blessings for 2021. I'm excited to be part of this Greater High Desert Chamber of Commerce. Our first coffee break a few weeks ago was amazing. I sincerely mean that. And if you missed it, you really, truly missed out. I'm excited about today's meeting. I know that we're going to have a lot of great information being given by the superintendents and the school districts being represented here today. I'm proud to say that I work with Grand Canyon University. I'm a counselor. I'm here locally, and we are partnered with a lot of these school districts. Go Sun Devils! All my kids graduated from Apple Valley Unified School District. But with that said, they get a lot of my emails. They hear a lot of my good stuff, those districts all day long, every month. I want to talk to you guys about an awesome opportunity with Grand Canyon University. I have a 25% scholarship, whether you're partnered with us or not. I have a 25% scholarship for any bachelor's degree started in the month of January, and there's still time. As a counselor, I enroll you, but not just that, I see you through your academic career. I have alumni as well as current students throughout the school districts are going to be presenting here today, as well as through businesses and hospitals in the high desert, and they can attest to I am there throughout their academic career with GCU. I thought my business card was going to be up there, but let me give you my phone number. I'm going to put that out there. I want you guys to grab your cell. I know our cells are never far from us. So I want you guys to send me a text to 602-247-4930. Put down your name, put down the date and the time you want to talk about your career goals for 2021. We'll discuss and match you up with the right degree plan to go with that career goal of yours and talk more about that 25% scholarship. I look forward to hearing from you guys.
Thank you, Rosita, and thank you to Grand Canyon University for sponsoring this morning's coffee break update. Before I go any further, I wanted to remind everyone that we have the chat function where we have several people saying good morning and Happy New Year. So that is also a good place to share some information other than what, of course, we're hearing from our presenters this morning. So make sure you have that. Also, that's a good place to ask questions if you have any questions throughout this morning's presentation. So we'll get to a little bit more of that later. Next up, we have our next sponsor, and we are thankful, as always, to have with us from Transformation Training and Development, LLC, Dr. Kanisha Williams. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. Happy New Year. So good to be on with you. Such a proud member of this wonderful community. As I always say, we know that everything rises and falls on leadership. So today I'm here to give you a challenge and a charge. Right now in our nation, we need leadership. I think we all know that. But I'm going to challenge you to see how can you fit into that. One of my mentors, Dr. John C. Maxwell, he says, everything rises and falls on leadership. And just a little less than 2 weeks, I'm going to be doing leadership transformation roundtables. They're absolutely free. And I'm wanting to partner with community leaders that want to first change themselves, and then we go out and change the world. We love politicians. I know I've seen a couple on here. We love you, but we're not looking for politicians to change this high desert. We are their change, guys. Each and every one of us that are leaders in our families first, right? In our organizations and our communities, when we change ourselves, then we go out and change our community. And oftentimes, what do we do as leaders? We lead, we execute. But I'm asking us to take a moment to add value to ourselves. Think about values-based leadership. Do we want our high desert to change for the better? And I know we all do. So I will be doing these leadership roundtables, transformation roundtables. They begin on Wednesday, January 27th. They're going to run for 6 weeks, only 1 hour a week for 6 weeks, guys. And it'll be from 5 to 6. Last time I presented this, one of our local mayors, I won't say who, booked me for his entire executive team. So I want to say thank you, because that community is going to be changed. I charge you and challenge you. My information is in the chat box. I only have 6 seats left. The first 6 people who emails me or text me, you're in free starting January 27th. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Good to hear from you. And also it will be good to hear from, as always, our friend this week as a sponsor with company Your Solar Plug. Please help me welcome Gabriel Reyes. Good morning, Gabriel.
What's going on, Greater High Desert family? And to Dr. Williams, I was actually give you a little plug. So I'm a big fan of John C. Maxwell. He is a phenomenal leader training. So I look forward to it, and I highly recommend anyone who just wants to better themselves in leadership, right? Most definitely do it. But I'm here with my solar company just to give a couple of updates on some things that were supposed to change, but didn't change for the betterment of those who want to go to renewable energy. There was a 26% federal tax rebate that was actually extended out for 2 more years. Now, what that means is that it was supposed to go down to 22%, where we would get less of a tax rebate. But they kept it at the 26%. So what's great is the tax rebate goes up and the monthly payment goes down. We don't do traditional liens, or we don't do the power purchase agreements where you're locked in for X amount of time. You actually own your solar panels when you're all said and done, and by going and being 100% self-sufficient, and you don't have to worry about any blackouts or anything else like that. All we would need to just generate a free proposal would be a utility bill to see if we can even give you any type of cost savings. Statistically proven, in closing, every year Edison goes up about 4% since 2013. So just look at your electric bill right now, add 4% year over year, and you'll see how it's naturally going to scale over time. So if you'd like a free proposal, feel free to shoot me a text at 760-987-5763, and we can do a free proposal. And if it makes sense, we'd love to be your solar plug, right? Moving into 2021. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. And I'm excited to hear all of our updates.
We are too. Thank you so much, Gabriel, and to Your Solar Plug for sponsoring, as well as to Grand Canyon University and Transformation Training and Development LLC. We appreciate your help in getting to put on this morning's coffee break update. I think it goes to show you, especially if you look at the number right now in our room, we're just shy of 100 participants. It goes to show you how much people are looking forward to hearing from our main presentation this morning. So I'm not going to take any more time. I want to get right to what we all came here to hear about. So we have 6 superintendents, leaders of our local education community. They're here with us this morning. They're going to tell you a little bit about what they are doing. Obviously, we all know that 2020 was a phenomenally trying year, and education obviously was no different in terms of figuring out how to get through it and where to go next. So I know they have a ton of information for you. So I'm going to introduce them all to you. So we have joining us from Adelanto Elementary School District, we have Dr. Kenan Mitchell. From the Apple Valley Unified School District, we have Trinae Nelson. From Excelsior Charter Schools, we have Dr. Derek King. From Victor Elementary School District, we have Jan Gonzalez. From the Victor Valley Union High School District, we have Dr. Ron Williams. And to start things off, we have from the Hesperia Unified School District, Superintendent Dave Olney. Good morning, Mr. Olney.
Good morning. How you doing, Marshall?
We are well. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for what you're about to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, and it's great to be here this morning. I certainly wish that we were all in person, but hopefully that will be happening soon. So thank you on behalf of my colleagues for this opportunity to speak to you this morning. When Mark reached out to us to speak to you today and share what our districts are doing during this pandemic, we got together because the last thing we wanted you to have to hear this morning is all of us saying the same thing over and over again. So we're each going to cover a few areas, and then after we speak, if we have time, there'll be an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you may have. As an introduction this morning, I'm going to review the events going back to March 13th when we decided to close down schools across our state. It's important to note that none of these decisions we've made were made in isolation, including the decision to shut down our schools back in March. At that time, there was very little information about COVID-19 and a lot of misinformation. Our county superintendent pulled all of the superintendents in the county together, brought in the San Bernardino County Department of Public Health, and yet there was still a lot of confusion and contradiction in the information they were receiving and then relaying on to us. I'm not faulting them. They were more of the messenger than the source. The High Desert superintendents began meeting regularly as well to try to sift through the information and collaborate on the decisions that we needed to make. And that truly has been very, very helpful as we've been supporting one another. I am truly blessed to be able to work with the folks who are here this morning and the rest of the superintendents in our Desert Mountain region. I can honestly say that none of us wanted to close our schools back in March. Again, at that time, we had very little information. And when the larger districts began closing down, followed by the districts in our own county, along with the increased level of concern coming from our public health, we had a decision to make, and we decided to err on the side of caution and safety. Many decisions were actually made for us, and we had very little maneuverability. The CDC, the California Department of Health, the California Department of Education, they were all issuing recommendations and requirements for school operations. At times, they said we had local decision-making, but were then given us recommendations and requirements that prohibited us from bringing all the students back, such as social distancing requirements and PPE requirements. We were holding out hope that we would be able to bring back students before the end of last year. But with these requirements and then the governor's stay-at-home orders, there was no way that we could possibly meet those requirements, ensure student and staff safety, and not open our districts up to liability. Realizing that we may be in this pandemic for the long haul, each district was putting together task forces, typically 3, to address ongoing distance learning, hybrid learning, where the student body would be split in half or thirds and attend only once or twice a week, and then fully reopening our schools with safety modifications. We continue to meet regularly with the County Superintendent of Schools office and the San Bernardino County Department of Public Health, as well as continuing our High Desert Superintendent meetings. Meanwhile, those ever-changing requirements, along with the decisions made by the governor, impacted decisions that we as district leaders were making. First and foremost, we wanted our students and staff to be safe, but we also understood and continue to understand the impact that not having in-person learning was having on our students. Now, don't get me wrong, we have students who are doing very well, but we also understand that for many students, it was having a negative impact, and for some, school is that one safe place for them to be. And we also know that school site closures are a tremendous challenge for you and for our working families. As we go to the summer, or as we got to the summer, our districts had plans in place for whatever the new school year had in store. I think we all thought that we would reopen our schools come August, and then we started to see the July spike. In addition to the agencies we are in constant contact with, we also began communicating with our local hospitals. With the increase in cases, the impact on our hospitals, many of us made the decision to open the 2020-21 school year, that's hard to say, in distance or hybrid learning. On July 17th, the governor and the California Department of Public Health took the decision out of our hands and mandated that we begin the year in distance learning. Since that time, the CDC, the Department of Public Health, Department of Public Education, and the governor have made many changes to the recommendations and the requirements. We have received guidance for working with small, stable, non-changing cohorts of students in person, an elementary waiver to return elementary students, and most recently, the governor's latest proposal for aggressively reopening schools, though that requires our county to be at an average of less than 28 new COVID cases a day per 100,000 in the population over a 7-day period. In our county, we are currently at 124. Districts that have already opened their elementary schools, such as Lucerne Valley, a small school district that has not seen the number of cases we have in larger districts, such as mine, may keep their elementary schools open in their hybrid model, following all the requirements. Those of us who aren't open are not allowed to open until the case number reduces to less than 28. As my colleagues discuss distance learning, cohorts, and the elementary waiver, professional development, the upcoming vaccination plans, which is kind of that light at the end of the tunnel, and our ongoing social emotional learning and support structures, know that all of us here want more than anything to get our students back in school. We continue to meet regularly, coordinate with the various agencies, including our local hospitals, and we will all reopen as soon as we are able to do so. Now I'd like to introduce the one and only Jan Gonzalez, Superintendent of the Victor Elementary School District.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. And thanks to Marshall and Neil for your work behind this coffee break. It's awesome. And Mark, cute little name, double O. I will call you Zero. Okay. All right.
Wow, wow, Jan, I'm sorry. I wouldn't have normally interrupted, but just wow. Okay, continue.
Do we want to
either, but
talk
thanks,
about what
Jan.
happened prior to you letting everybody in?
And ladies and gentlemen, Jan Gonzalez.
Okay, thank you. All right. I have the pleasure of speaking to you guys about distance learning, a topic that a year ago, I don't think any of us really had tackled beyond our independent study programs that we hold in our districts. I'll be speaking specifically to some things to Victor Elementary School District, but you have to know that because of the collaboration Dave just spoke about, it was very similar across the high desert and even in the mountains whom we meet with as well. So in spring, distance learning was anything but consistent at that time. We were focused on getting technology out, distribution of packets in some case, the use of apps like Google Classroom, Class Dojo for assignments, and then, like I said, distribution. It just lacked consistency. But at the same time, you all need to know that behind the scenes, an enormous amount of research was going on. We were running surveys with our parents over, a spectrum of topics. But for some of us, we had to initially start with technology needs in the households so that we knew what needed to be done. And then Chromebooks were purchased. For some of us, we didn't have Chromebooks for our little ones, our TK through first grade. And then also hotspots for the households that needed it for connectivity. We vetted online platforms. So, while we launched with Zoom, we continued vetting the online platforms to make sure that we were providing the safest one for our students. There was collaboration among our teachers and classified employees on items such as focus standards. What do we need to focus on in our time with our kids that will give them the biggest bang for their buck going across the grade levels? Identifying needs for professional development, all of this thinking, like Dave said, that, you know, we would only need this for a little while. Our Educational Services Department compiled a research-based manual for our teachers that included online teaching strategies, materials to use, sample schedules, those types of things. And then, of course, we are a collective bargaining state, so negotiations occurred to negotiate the effects of all of this. At the same time, across the high desert, all of our Nutrition Services Department were also adapting to a brand new job, a new way of working, and we're doing, and still are, a tremendous job serving all of our families that have kids in their household from ages 3 to 18. You need to know that literally millions of meals have been distributed across this high desert by all the districts, and we're very proud of this. Our maintenance and custodial staffs, at the same time, we're doing their research. As we've been telling you, we're hoping to reopen. I mean, if we could do it tomorrow, we would be thrilled. So they had a lot of work to do. What do we do with our HVACs to make it safer? What are the new disinfecting techniques? What is the mapping for arrival and dismissals look like? They had a whole new job description as well. Then in August, all of us returned. And as Dave mentioned to you, we returned in distance learning. Now we saw a much different picture than what happened in the spring. Now we see daily meetings with the teachers in Victor Elementary spending at least 180 minutes online with students, working on academics and social emotional learning, which you'll hear a little bit more about. We're seeing different configurations of classrooms, ranging from small groups doing guided reading to whole class lessons, and even in some cases, even where teachers have combined classes and all the teachers are in the Zoom as well, getting one lesson and then dividing up to conquer afterwards. We have principals like Dr. Williams visiting classrooms daily and cabinet visiting classrooms frequently. Watching as all subjects are taught. We've seen science experiments, project-based learning, etc., happening in distance learning. Our multi-tiered systems of support teams are supporting families in every way needed. And you'll hear a little bit more about that later when attendance is addressed. And then, of course, each of our districts has family resource centers, and they are just hitting it out of the ballpark by providing various trainings for our parents, including Zoom, how to maneuver in Zoom, tips for helping their students in all subject areas, and then others for them at this time to meet other needs, like what kind of financial planning do you need? So here's some financial planning classes for you. Parenting classes, because they're spending more time with their children than they ever have in the past. English as a second language, citizenship classes, anything that is needed out there. Do we think this is the best way for our students to learn? No. But having them back in the classrooms is the best, and we're looking forward to that day. And we will take these positive learnings we're getting from distance learning and move them forward into the classrooms. Things like small group instruction, guided reading across the grade levels, the way we involve our families, all of that will move forward. But I can tell you that every day we are improving distance learning, and it is getting better and better. Not that we want it to go on, we do not, but we're continue to strive to provide the best education we can. And with that being said, we want to thank everybody for what they've done as well. So we have our community that, and our, including our service clubs that step forward to meet our families' needs. Our staffs for relearning jobs that they never even dreamed they would have to do. Our parents who have a whole new job on their plate as well, and they are doing a fabulous job. And of course, our students for their resiliency and their ability to adapt to this way of learning. So now it's my pleasure to introduce the superintendent of Apple Valley, Trenae Nelson.
Good morning, everyone. It's really hard to follow Dave and Jan. They have been just such an incredible support to me as a brand new superintendent. Actually, I call myself brand new, but I'm in year 2. So Dr. Kennan followed, and so I can't imagine taking on a district in the middle of COVID, which he did. And so this team is unbelievable. Derek and Dr. Williams, you have no idea the relationships that are built and that have supported us through this time, including our community. I am going to talk about the waiver process and some in-person instruction, because our district did get a waiver approved, as many of our districts did. We did bring students back, and let me just start with what the waiver required. So our waiver required categories such as cleaning and disinfecting, entrance, egress, and movement within the school to provide social distancing, face coverings, which in the process of bringing students back, the face covering rule changed. So initially it identified that we were required to have children wear face coverings if they were second grade and above. And somewhere along the line, after our waiver was approved, probably 24 hours prior to actually bringing students back, we heard that no, every child had to wear a face covering unless they were in a category that had a doctor's note to allow them not to. And so we had to pivot very quickly and try to figure out how to convey that and support our system to understand the change at a flip of a switch in an approved document from the state. Very difficult decisions and transitions to make. Health screenings for students and staff that required all staff to acknowledge that they weren't suffering from any of the COVID symptoms, as well as temperature checks and different categories that we had to have prepared. And in the middle of this, remember, in an area like Apple Valley that's transports over 200 square miles, you can't let a child get on a bus and then say, sorry, you got to get off because you have a temperature. So we had to have systems in place when they arrived at school to isolate them and support that process until somebody could pick them up. So isolation rooms had to be identified, locations where others would not interact with the students other than a nurse or an LVN that was the person in charge of that. Health and hygiene practices, washing hands, all the things that we hope people do on a regular basis, all of a sudden became just the top priority for training. And hand sanitizer. I don't know about you, but my hands are cracked and every part of me feels like it just needs to be soaked in water because we are constantly sanitizing. Identification and tracing, contact tracing. My risk manager is an amazing person who was a teacher prior to moving into risk management. So she had a concept of what looked like in a classroom, and then took on this new role of what we call the queen of COVID, because she had to have every district has this person, but she had to have every piece of this nuance of what this plan entailed, what we would do if we had an outbreak, and who her contacts were. And let me just add to that, in the middle of all of this, she lost both of her parents to COVID-19. So on top of, the stress of having to implement a plan across the system, she also was dealing with it personally, and devastating. So, we move on to physical distancing. How do you tell a kindergartner that they can't hug their teacher or come close to them? And, teachers on the other end of this were worried about, how do I tie a shoe or help adjust a jacket? Or, you train parents, make sure your children can get their clothes on. Something most people don't even realize is an issue. But kindergarten teachers tie a lot of wet shoelaces. Yuck. But in COVID, they're panicked about it, right? Staff training and family education, all of the things that Jan and Dave mentioned, high priority for us. Triggers for switching back to distance learning, communication plans. So all of those things were what we had to produce first before we could bring students back. Aside from the waiver, as Dave and Jan both mentioned, there is this process for a stable cohort. And for us, the first group to come back was brought back under a push from the teachers that supported our students with exceptional needs, our severely handicapped students. They were ready, their bargaining unit supported it. And so on October, the last week of October, I believe it was October 26th, our students with exceptional needs returned to campus. I was on campuses doing temperature checks. I watched children run onto campus, including high school students, thrilled to be back to their school. And I just say that because one of the opportunities we have today is to have this switch for some families and kids to realize how school is impactful and that they can come back with open arms and that we're ready for them and that they will love school again. Our stable cohorts also lasted the longest. I kept them open after the closure of our waivers students, and we did that because, again, they're exceptional needs. They needed to be there as much as possible for their learning. They stayed open until December 8th. And because the numbers at St. Mary's were so extraordinary, we made the decision that we weren't going to put anybody else at risk. And I'll talk about numbers in a minute. Our elementary waiver, then we followed up after the October start with our exceptional needs students. We moved into our waiver students with a phased in approach. Those students came in a hybrid model, 2 days a week, either a Monday, Tuesday, or a Thursday, Friday, with Wednesday being a deep cleaning day in between the cohort, the waiver students, the hybrid. These students were half of a class, and TK and K arrived first. And so we had 8 first days of school, TKK, then our 1st through 3rd grade, and then our 4th through 6th grade students. We added a cohort in the middle of that of our English learner students who also were extended onto longer days or 4 days a week to provide services for them. What I noticed as kids entered campus was things that you would not expect. Kindergarten and transitional kindergarten students and preschoolers arriving and going without a parent for their first actual day on campus. But they also recognized friends from being on virtual learning. So they would get out, out of the car and head on to campus, and they'd start yelling names. And it was phenomenal to watch. There were no tears, except at the end of the day when they had to go home. A first in my 29 years in public education, to watch a kindergartner cry at the end of the day because they had to leave and not cry when they arrived and had to leave their parent. There were less parent tears as well, because I think parents were ready to have their children arrive to campus, and they had been being the teachers all that time and continue to do that. Some takeaways. This will change some of the things we do as we enter students into school when we get back to normal. We anticipate doing some over the internet introductions so that kids have the opportunity to get to know who their teacher is and maybe some of their peers before they walk onto a campus. We have had to work really hard on keeping everybody's spirits high. I read an article way back right after we went into the pandemic that a superintendent's job was the most difficult job in education. And I sent it out to my peers and said, I totally disagree. Because right now I think the most difficult job in education is parent. I'm a parent of a student in my system. So I leave work and I go home and he says, Mom, when do we get to go back to school? Now he's a high school student, so he understands, but it's still difficult. And so I can only imagine all of our families that are not in education who are educating their children alongside us. And so that partnership has just been invaluable, and we do need to get it changed. We need to get back to school. When we shut down because the numbers, like I said, at St. Mary's were high, but on the day after Thanksgiving break, we came back and we had 19 positive COVID cases across our system. A neighboring district who had no students present had 50 positive cases. So we knew it wasn't the kids, but I also was running into issues with staffing, because although we didn't have positive cases, we had 200 people that were in isolation or quarantine because of outside activities of work. Either a family member had COVID and they were exposed. So those became impactful. 200 people on my sub list and nobody else in our valley back to school other than Lucerne Valley, and I couldn't get subs to show up. That was our issue. That's why we made the determination to shut down. Okay, so rumors are out there. We had way too many COVID cases. We didn't. We had 2 situations where it spread across our system through staff contact, and that was when they went to lunch together, not because they had masks off with students or anything else. Dave mentioned we have a new plan for reopening in person. It has some changes to it. Our system is allowed to reopen. We just have to post a plan prior to February 1st because we've already had children in place, but I will still consider St. Mary's as part of our reason, as well as the other regional hospitals to reopen. So that's all I have on waiver, but I just want to remind everybody that I continue to tell people to have patience, grace, and faith. Patience with what's going on, grace with each other because people are really hard on each other, and faith in, especially in our teachers, in their ability to continue to do this, whatever the change is. So thank you. I get to introduce Dr. Kenan Mitchell, right? Kenan, I think you're next with professional development.
Yes. Hi, good morning. Thank you, Trinae. Good morning, Chamber. So happy to speak before you this morning. My name is Kenan Mitchell. I'm a proud superintendent of Adelanto Elementary School District. I'd like to thank our chamber leaders for providing some time for the educational community to talk with y'all. We really appreciate this time. I also like to thank my peers. I'm the neophyte on the crew and just started as superintendent in July and getting used to the desert and how things get done out here. I'm really thankful for my peers that helped me come on board. So thank you all. In terms of an update, I would like to talk about our focus on professional development. Educational research literature informs us that the variability in student performance is attributed to the variability in teacher practice. This message is simple. What teachers do matters. Therefore, our objective as district leaders is simple. We have to hire and develop high-performing school leaders for every school, and we have to hire and develop high-performing teachers for every classroom. We start this conversation by asking principals to visualize their very best teacher on their campus. And so I actually ask principals to close their eyes and to think about the best teacher they have on their campus. And think and picture that person's face. Think about their mindset, their work ethic, their classroom practices, their relationships with students, their relationships with parents, their relationships with their peers. And then I asked them to think about if you had that exact same teacher in every classroom at your school, what would your test scores look like? And as expected, principals will remark that their test scores and their student achievement would fly through the roof. Therefore, we learned two things about that. We learned that it's doable because there's a teacher on every one of our schools that is phenomenal and doing phenomenal work. We also get some clarity about our mission as school leaders, that our mission becomes simple, that we need to replicate the mindsets, approaches, and instructional practices of our best teachers across every classroom in the district. That's the mission, to put the best teacher that we possibly can in every classroom. But that's simple, but it's very hard to do. So we accomplish this task doing three things as school districts. Number one is to provide high quality professional development to teachers that build the skill, knowledge, mindset, and instructional practices of teachers around high quality instruction. What does high quality instruction look like, feel like, sound like? You've all been students at some point in your career. You know that there's a continuum of performance among people who teach. You all can probably think of your favorite teacher that you had in your career. And you know, the funny thing, when I used to supervise high schools, I'd go to the high school and I ask kids, who's the best teacher on campus? And then they'd say, oh, Miss So-and-so. I said, well, take me, so let's walk. So I actually would conduct a classroom observation with a high school student. And I'll sit side by side with them and say, why is this teacher, in your mind, the best teacher on campus? And after doing this dozens and dozens of times, the bottom line is really simple. Kids want a caring, strict, loving teacher that pushes the heck out of them, that makes them see the best in themselves. And so that can be replicated in terms of that practice. Not all things that teachers do can be replicated, but most of what teachers do can be replicated. And that becomes the mission as it relates to professional development. The second thing that we do is to create ongoing forums for teachers to reflect on their practice. You know, the bad thing that sometimes happens in schools and school districts is that we do a lot of professional development. We send teachers to some really cool conferences. They go there and they get inspired. But if you don't give time for teachers to reflect, to plan, to incorporate those new ideas into their daily practice, to change their lesson plans, change their classroom practices, it really was for naught. So what we want to do is provide time for teachers to reflect and plan with each other, talk about instruction with each other, talk about what's working, and have time to incorporate new learning into their daily practice. And the whole goal is to build instructional coherence, not instructional standardization. We don't want the same thing happening across every classroom. We want what's important. We want to define what's important for kids to learn and how do we know that they learned it. And then we want teachers to use their own creative essence to really plan those lessons, because teaching is highly personal and scientific. So there's art and science to teaching, and you just can't standardize teaching, but you certainly can create opportunities for teachers to talk out loud about what they teach. You know, the bad thing about schools in America is teaching is one of the most isolated careers in America. If you go to Silicon Valley and you look at our tech giants and you go into Google and Facebook and these huge giants, these folks that are just doubling technology every 3 months. When you go into those buildings, you'll see flat spaces. You'll no longer see cubicles and you'll no longer see offices. And they're creating the synergy between people in marketing and people in technology and people in business, and they're all working together to create a product that's responsive to consumers. And that's why they're able to put out a new cell phone every 3 months or 6 months. And that's why we see a doubling of technology. Well, in teaching is different. Teachers come to work and they're largely on their own when they close that door. And we want to end that. We want to deprivatize classroom practice. We want to create learning environments for the adults on our campuses that they can share practices, see each other teach, teach together. You know, I used to supervise at one of the elementaries I used to oversee. I had 2 third-grade teachers that taught side by side to each other for 25 years, but have never seen each other teach. Now, how do you work next door to someone for 25 years? It's teaching the same grade level and have never seen each other teach. Well, we believe that there's a lot that can be learned from teachers, from other teachers. And so we want to create opportunities for teachers to see each other teach, as well as give each other feedback and input on best practices and things that are working for each other. And then lastly, like I said, we want to provide opportunities for teachers to observe each other, provide feedback to each other, and foster highly collaborative and supportive adult learning environments focused on getting better. So the thing about professional development, or the thing about schools, is that principals are actually leading 2 schools. They're actually leading 2 schools. They're not leading one. There is a school for the kids, and then there's a university for the adults. And the better learning environment that we can create for adults, the better skill and knowledge and capabilities that teachers bring into the classroom, and then thereby improve student learning. And so we're now shifting at the start of the school year, as my peers have suggested, we were scrambling, trying to transition our school systems to an online environment. So at the start of the school year, our professional development was largely focused on preparing teachers to teach in an online environment. Huge amount of work, a lot of fear in the organization. You had folks that were teaching 20, 25 years that now had to use computers and Zoom and trying to. So this created a huge amount of anxiety for a lot of our teachers. Our younger teachers, not so much. They grew up in an electronic environment. But some of our more veteran teachers really struggled with this. And so our first priority in terms of professional development at the beginning of the year, when we were forced to shut down, was to get our people up to speed on how to operate and teach in an online environment. So now I think we've gotten some speed on that. I think most of our schools, our teachers would say, hey, we're fairly good. So again, some of our teachers are rock stars at this, and some of our teachers are still struggling with this. But now we're starting to shift our efforts, our focus for professional learning and professional collaboration to learning and implementing effective mindsets, approaches, and instructional strategies to accelerate student learning in preparation for when our schools reopen. We want our schools, in terms of the skills, knowledge, and capabilities of our teachers, to be better than they were when they shut down. And it's through these efforts to grow the skill, knowledge, and capacity of our school leaders and our teachers that we expect to produce students who graduate from our systems college and career ready, not college or career ready, but college and career ready. And so our focus right now in terms of professional development is getting our skills up, our teachers up to speed. So because we want our schools to be better than they were when we shut down. So thank you for your time. Following me is Dr. Ron Williams, Superintendent, Victor Valley Union High School District. Thank you.
Dr. Williams, I think you're still muted.
Okay, yes, and just to be respectful of time, I'll try to kind of abridge mine because I know that there's a presentation after mine. I was very fortunate back in right before Thanksgiving, the holidays, to get a call and to be asked from the governor's office to be on the community vaccine committee. And I thought initially that, okay, it would be a couple of meetings, not too much of a time commitment. But I found that to be significantly different. We started right before the Thanksgiving, during the Thanksgiving holidays, and we started like a meeting, and it was 3 hours during the Thanksgiving holidays, and then the first week in December, and we started meeting every week for about 3 hours. And I'll tell you, that was really an interesting experience because from the California perspective, we're a part of the Western states that deals with California, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington. So we were all developing our plan together. And being on the Community Vaccine Committee, we provided information to our guiding principals committee, which took information to our technical committee. So there was quite a few steps. Initially going into it, we was focusing on getting our dosage out to our respective states. Here in California, initially in December, we was going to try to get about a third of about 300 and something million dosage in, with the ideal that by the end of December, we would have another 2 million coming in. And so the focus at that particular time was strictly on getting the dosage out. And I think that the federal government, as well as all parties involved, did an excellent job of that. Obviously, when it came down to getting the vaccine approved, Pfizer, Moderna, that wasn't too much of an issue, and we kind of put that on a fast track. And we thought, okay, we can get it into the states, no problem. And then we start looking at the infrastructure, and that's where we've probably ran into more of a hiccup. And I can tell you this process has been changing on a week-by-week basis. Our committee has been chaired by the Surgeon General for the state of California, as well as the state health officer. And we've had participants on our committee from the guideline committee as well, which has been very, very informative. And I was looking at our first plan of distribution that first came out in regards to the vaccine. I'm sure all of you know the healthcare providers, as well as the senior living facilities. That was our primary goal when we first started. And it kind of worked okay. But then some of the things that we did not take in consideration was that many health providers, et cetera, may have chosen not to have themselves vaccinated. We worked from there saying, okay, let's put together a marketing campaign. And that kind of was effective to a degree. And it's like every week it's been new guidelines coming down from the federal level primarily, and for the state of California is trying to get those integrated into our 58 counties. And I can tell you the 58 counties, although we're working with California Public Health, the expectations, they kind of fluctuate from one county to the other. Obviously, after getting the dosage in, the large hospitals, no problems there. But, CVS pharmacies, Walgreens, and a number of the smaller clinics, we've been pretty successful in getting them out there as well. But it's still been a significant challenge. And what I'll do is I will just share with you, originally it was 75 or above. I'm sure everyone knows that we've dropped that down to 65, but it takes time between the time that we make a recommendation and it goes throughout the system. I know that now with the governor, as well as our public health has moved it down to 65. But then when it comes down to the providers that's putting the dosage into the arm, it takes a little time for those type. We're looking at putting together mobile units to distribute the vaccine as well. Is somewhat of a challenge. But we're moving forward in regards to that. And to make sure that I leave time for Dr. King, I'm going to, each week, I would just definitely encourage all of you like to go on to the California Public Health. We normally hold a meeting each week. It's about 3 hours long, and the public can listen to our conversation, provide input, ask questions, etc. And we try to address all of the questions that are submitted. On the Community Advisement Committee, there's 70 of us on this committee. So there's a lot of dialogue that's going on. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Derek King, who will share social emotional learning as well as attendance.
So happy New Year to everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. You heard a lot of similarity and cohesion between everything that we're talking about today. So I'm gonna talk to you about two subjects, and I'm gonna do my absolute best to see if we can compress this a little bit. So like you heard Dr. Williams say, I'm gonna talk to you about attendance, and I'm gonna talk to you about social emotional learning and mental health. Okay, so first let me start out by saying, I wanna say thank you to all of you, because this really is a trying time of, for just students being able to learn. And one of the things that's not lost on us is, within this environment for all of our districts and organizations, our attendance is above 90 to 95 to 96%. So thank you for that. However, I also want to put a fine point on things. What does attendance really look like in this environment? Attendance, sometimes we have this tendency to really think about it from the middle class perspective, right? Being able to come on, I have a quiet space to be able to sit here and learn, or even speak to you. But that's not true for all of our kids. That's not true in all of our households, right? So what happens is, in some cases, there's a lot of distractions. There might be the dog there, the cat there, other brothers and sisters, poor internet access, just not even having a physical space to be able to sit there and learn, or a quiet space to be able to digest the information that they're actually getting from the teachers. And so sometimes we do have students that miss. So what are we doing? How are we responding? So I want to say thank you to our school resource officers, to our support staffs, to our principals, to our administrators, to all of our teachers who are taking on differing roles by going out to your houses just to check on our families. Some of the things you're going to hear me say are unique to Excelsior, but most of it is something we're all doing. We're all going out to students' houses to check on them, to see how they're doing, to address, any deficits that might be existing. One of the other things I want to remind you of, sometimes we have this tendency to think about teachers and we think about parents, but we don't think about the fact that a lot of our teachers are parents, right? So while they're trying to teach your kid, keep your kid engaged, they still have a child of their own that they have to do the exact same thing for, which could impact their child's attendance. The other thing I want to remind you of, and I want to say thank you to our teachers, because not only are we talking about anxieties relative to meeting in person, or infection rates relative to meeting in person, but we're also talking about people's internal anxieties about not getting infected and not bringing those types of things home to their families, or learning loss that's actually happening with their child or their own student cohort, and all the things that we're doing to try to make sure that we're mitigating that. And so that kind of brings me to the social emotional learning and the mental health aspect, because the isolation, trying to learn in this distracted environment is really taking a toll on our kids. In these home visits, we're finding out some catastrophic things, that are actually happening. And that could be death of a family member. It could be physical violence against them. It's all these things are still taking place. And within the school setting, we're still doing our absolute best to ensure that we're providing support and trying to normalize the educational setting as much as possible while we're in this pandemic. So for example, a lot of us have Zoom sessions where kids are just getting together just to listen to music, just to talk, just to engage, just to do those types of things. Like one of the things that we've extended to, we do a program called Care Concierge, where we actually do a mental health coordination service, not just for our students, not just for our staff, but for our students and their parents and their extended families, for our staff and for their parents and their extended families also. And like you heard Jan mention, our parent engagement centers, they're absolutely being used. It's a godsend for us to be able to have those things and stand those things up. So I absolutely want to say thank you to you guys for everything that you're actually doing in this environment as parents, augmenting that education. And like you heard every single one of us say, we really want to get back to in-person instruction. We realize what's actually happening in this scenario, and we want nothing more than to be able to get back to teaching and learning in person. That brings me to this fact. You heard some conversation about waivers. Well, for some of us, depending on the grades, waivers aren't even available to you. So like, for example, in the secondary setting, there's not an opportunity, because you heard about the infection rates in San Bernardino County, that some of us don't even have an opportunity to have in-person instruction absent certain special populations, which we've been able to do. And in some cases, like you heard, we've had to restrict that back also. So as I close, one of the things I want to invite you to do, you heard us talking about child nutrition. So there's been some modifications to child nutrition within the state of California. So now you can go to any of our campuses and go get a meal. Should your child need a meal? It doesn't have to be their school of residence. As long as they're school age, they can go during those times. So look those things up. If you find that you're having trouble with your child or you need some help social emotionally, reach out to your school. Reach out, because we do have mechanisms in place to be able to provide that mental health support. But the last thing I want to leave you with, I want you to take this opportunity to really say thank you and celebrate your child, because we're asking them to learn complex concepts in a very distracted, isolated environment. Imagine this. Imagine being a second grader and my dog is over here and my brother is talking and this, that, and the other thing, and you're asking me to learn to read. And we're asking our teachers to engage those kids in that environment. So don't forget, please say thank you to your child for just having the wherewithal to operate, to try to learn within this environment. Any learning loss that takes place, we're doing our absolute best to measure it, and we're doing our absolute best to mitigate it. But we want to say thank you to you as parents. We want to say thank you to you as the business community, because a lot of you are reaching out, being able to help us fill in some of these gaps, and these service organizations are doing the exact same thing. So with that being the case, again, Happy New Year. Please use your school district as a resource. If you just don't know where else to get the answer, even if we can't provide it, we can give you direction. So with that being the case, I want to turn it back over to Marshall.
Thank you, Dr. King, and thank you, Jan, Dr. Williams, Mr. Olney, Trinae, Dr. Mitchell. This was phenomenal. And let me say, I don't have an audience of the six of you quite very often directly. So let me say I tremendously respect you. Trinae, you said something earlier that, there's rumors going around about
Oh, Marshall, I think you froze up. Come back to us, Marshall.
He was giving Trinae a compliment and got excited.
He was, and I'll make sure, Trinae, he reaches out to you and makes that comment. But again, thank you, everybody. Thank you to our educators that were here this morning to present. I want to once again thank our three sponsors this morning: Transformation, Grand Canyon University, your solar plug. Appreciate you all being here this morning. Again, don't forget our upcoming events. Please check our chamber calendar. If you have any questions about anything that has to do with this merger, you can go ahead and email me directly. Oh, Marshall, you're back.
I am back. I don't know what happened. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to all the superintendents for what you've done. I respect all of you tremendously, and I think we have some of the best leadership in the entire state right here. So thank you all for everything you've all done. And with that being said, I think Mark's going to unmute everybody, and we will say goodbye, and we will see everybody again for our next coffee break update on January 29th at 9 a.m. right here. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.
Have a great
Thank you.
weekend.
Thank you so much.
Safe.
Y'all be good.
Bye. Happy holidays.
Thanks,
Everybody for being here.
Information. Have a wonderful
weekend. Bye.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody. Okay, signing off.
Bye, Mark.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.